Okay, Michael Tobman, thank you for coming down to City Hall. I was just wondering, what can you tell me about the Marty Connor Dance Squadron race? What can we learn about that?
I would say much like Roger Simon piece on the Obama campaign during the presidential primary, he was relentless. He executed, Daniel that is, near flawlessly against an excellent plan to get more votes than Connor's previous opponent, Ken Diamondstone, got in 2006. It was not a complicated equation, but it's one that took a ton of work, planning, and certainly the Working Families Party played a large role in that, but also the quality of Dan's accomplishments, his relationships, and certainly he and I are fellow Schumer alums, so I'm very fond of him. But just slightly more votes than Diamondstone got in '06, and you run up the numbers in your home base and are relentless in conveying the message. Was it an anti-incumbency message? Sure. But it wasn't necessarily anti-Albany. It was just, as hokey as this may sound, it was very much about change. Marty was there for a very long time. And I've done projects with Marty, and I think he was a great state senator. And then, exited right.
That's an interesting point, that it was anti-incumbent but not anti-Albany.
Correct. Because that would have been, that was the message in '06. And you saw that didn't quite work. It got you 90% of the way there. So then you look and say, what could be different? And it became more anti-Marty. What about him? Him as an institution or him as a person? I don't think, he's a neighborhood guy. I live in the district. So it really was about running up the numbers in places where you needed to get more votes. And Chinatown and Battery Park City and Tribeca and Soho and whatever votes could come out of Dumbo and places like that.
Interesting. What can you tell me about the Sheldon Silver race?
In 1978, I think, Stanley Stein got was speaker. Somebody correct me if it wasn't 1978. And people at home in the district and some folks in Albany decided that it was time for that to be over. That's not the case with Speaker Silver. And that has been clearly demonstrated. It was a resounding victory. And he also showed he could take on all the papers in New York City and emerge triumphant. The numbers demonstrated that he's a guy that delivers for the district. The district has changed a lot, but it's a hell of a lot different than it was for Stein back in '78.
Yeah. And speaking of newspapers, what do you think of that New York Post cover the day of the primary?
New York City has a vibrant tabloid presence, and I think it's the greatest. New York City papers are the best. And it was a great cover. Governor Patterson is a smart guy, he's a clever guy, and he's never going to stop with these comments. And his attitude is, you'll just get used to him. You'll know when I'm serious, and you'll know when I'm not. Folks will either cover it differently, or they won't. But I don't think there was any terrible ill intent there. And I think what's wonderful is you saw at Speaker Silver's victory party. Governor Patterson was there. Speaker Silver says it's not about mayors, it's not about governors. And the governor's standing right there, and he turns to him and says, nothing personal, something like that. I mean, that's what's wonderful about this. So the tabloids run a cover, which is accurate and fun and great and appropriate.
Right.
And then you call each other up and say, so what do you think of that coverage? So I don't, it's not sensational. It's fun.
Speaking of fun, I wanted to ask you about Flushing and the assembly race that was out there. It was incumbent Ellen Young versus challenger Grace Meng.
Yes, and I'm proud to say that I worked on that race for Grace. She's an amazing candidate. She outworked her opponent. She was right on the message. She was, I'd like to say modestly, right on the mail. And she had a multi-ethnic coalition, former city council person and former assemblywoman Julia Harrison, who has had a storied history with the Asian community in Flushing, has mellowed as she's gotten older. She's a bit of a lioness in winter. And she was active supporter of Grace's. Korean community, Hispanic community supported Grace. The numbers were there. You do well in the Asian community and better than your opponent in other areas where she actually wasn't active. I thought Ellen would be more active, frankly, but I saw her in Denver a few days before the primary. Shouldn't be back in the district campaign. There was also a generational shift in an immigrant community. Grace was born in the United States. She's a professional. She's an attorney by training. She practices, and that was not Ellen's background. I think the community became insistent that they have not just one of their own, but then the right one of their own. And Grace benefited from that, tapped into it, encouraged it, motivated it, and benefited from it. And certainly her father, having had to see a couple of years earlier, made the household name. But memories are short with voters, and 2 years had gone by, and Ellen was aggressive in trotting out her endorsements, but I don't think it came to much. And a lot of people stayed out of the race. Again, it was an internal, it was a fight internal to an immigrant community, and with the citywide races coming up in 2009 and statewide in 2010, I don't think people correctly decided why get involved in that. It's a toss-up, and if I'm wrong, I just lost a handful of votes in question.
Interesting. Since you mentioned the citywide races, and for the last question, I just wanted to, what are you hearing about term limits, and what do you think is going to happen with that situation here?
Personally, I think term limits are anti-democratic. However, I am absolutely opposed to any effort to roll them back or modify them or change them. The current council came in because of term limits, and when I was working with Senator Schumer, I think I must have gone to 25 or 30 of those swearings in, and everyone was keenly aware it was term limits that brought these group of members in. They have been here the past 8 years with a countdown clock over their heads. They all know it, and you can't change the rules to benefit yourself. And I do believe it's about the council. I don't believe it's about the mayor. The mayor is accomplished beyond anybody's imagination in a way you and I can't even guess. Before becoming mayor, a great mayor, and God knows what he'll do after this, but whatever it is, it'll be tremendous. It's about the council. And I don't think at the end of the day they have the votes to do this. There are over 100 candidates already out there ready to run against them. They're either going to run for an open seat or they're going to run against an incumbent. And then they'll have this issue to beat them up with. I don't think it happens. I don't see how they do it. The voters have spoken 2 times. I think the outcry and consequences would be immediate.
Do you think it should be brought to the floor in order for them to vote it down?
I think that would be a good show. But I don't even think it should get to that. Anybody that puts their name on it, shame on you.
Michael Tobman, unless you have anything else to add, I think I'm...
No, other than I'm a forced substitute for Isaac, so I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.